Welcome to IDG. I am Sonu Bhasin, and IDG is the Informal Discussion Group. This is a carry forward from our college days, where college is St. Stephen's College. And over the past few months, this has become a place to have and listen to meaningful conversations. So my guest today on IDG started her banking career, as a stopgap arrangement. Something to do while she waited for her PhD admissions to come through. But the fact that she is still here and in her journey has broken many glass ceilings, I think just speaks volumes about the love that she has for her profession. So I am delighted to have Manisha Girotra on IDG, a fellow Stephanian, and we look forward to the conversation. And a disclaimer, both Manisha and I have decided that we are not going to spend time ranting about women or the lack of them in the corporate world. So welcome, Manisha. Welcome to IDG.
Thank you, Sonu. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Manisha, you've often said that it was your childhood and college days that were a great influence on your overall career. So take us back to your childhood. I believe you grew up in Shimla. So take us back to your childhood. What are the enduring memories of your childhood and enduring memories of college?
Sure. So I firmly believe that for any individual, the childhood and the college years really form your character and the way you actually deal through situations and circumstances in life. And I grew up in Simla, as you mentioned. So mountains, limited, my father was in the government, so limited means resources. So, a lot of life in the mountains is, it's cold. You sort of spend a lot of time walking uphill, downhill, carrying your own bags, doing a lot of your own work. And I think what the mountains really teach you is endurance, right? You build a respect for the mountains because you don't know where the next bit of snow will lie, where you will fall, where the next bit of ice is where. So all the challenges of a mountain person, I think, got imbibed in me. And I think that's the most important thing in a career. You said I'm here 30 years later. And I think given the challenges that this career has, I think the most important thing that my childhood built for me was, a high level of endurance. Then I think the second thing, which I really thank my father for, is a high level of empathy. My dad was in a state-owned bank and, he was passionate about financial inclusion long before the word became fashionable. So, he would go and open branches in the remotest villages, give farmers loans again for cows and, farming, etc. And, people used to love him and say, Manager Sahab aa gaya. And he used to drag me and my brother to all these branch openings. They hated it, 5 a.m, get into his rattle jeep with his one-eyed driver. Literally, the guy had one eye. So, and we were like, we're going to die on this trip. Last thing we kids wanted to do. But, it was sort of building in us that the most important thing in life is a high level of empathy. And I think that as a leader is really important, because I think where we all lack in the corporate world is that we don't take enough empathy to work. And we're all individuals and humans. And, if you are able to take care of people empathetically, I think you build a much loyal team. And you become a better individual to clients too. So I think that's what really helped me in my childhood. Stephens, I think, really transformed me. So I think, my mom's a tiger mom. So there's this WhatsApp group of our childhood friends and people are talking about their childhood memories, how they broke this class, session and went off and ran away to eat ice cream and this. And I have no interesting stories to tell. And I was thinking to myself, do I have a memory lapse or am I really that boring a person? And I realized I'm that boring a person because my mother kept me so straight and narrow, focused on grades and academics, that I have no fun memory of childhood. So I think, coming to Stephens, I think while she still kept me very straight and narrow, I think, thankfully there were not the days of mobile, etc. So you could still cheat a little bit and run away to Ghungru, in the afternoon at least to a discotheque, or run off, to the dhaba and bunker class. She wasn't monitoring my attendance. So, so I think it gave me the confidence. I was a shy person till I was in Simla. And I think what investment banking really needs is you to be a confident person, because you're putting yourself out there with the biggest of entrepreneurs and leaders. So I think the confidence that I had in myself and the faith I have in myself really came from Stephens. So I'm really grateful for my 3 years in Stephens. My daughter, who's now going to college, asked me the other day, what are your best memories of Stephens? Which was your best class? So I said my best class was dhaba honors. When I sat at dhaba and hung out with my friends and ate samosas and chai from Rotas, that's what I remember of college. I don't remember any of the eco I studied. I remember what I did outside, the friendships I made, and that's what has been the most enduring memories to date. So so that I think is what helped me with my childhood.
Yeah. So you are which batch, Manisha?
1990.
1990 pass out. Okay. So then from college, you went to D school, right? Which itself is really, really tough. but then
Yes.
you were also a gold medalist there. And with the Tiger Mom and D School, and the old saying that all work and no play, etc., etc. Uh, s- what was D School like for you? Was it all only work at D School?
Well, D school, I reverted to my mean, which is basically being a geek. I think 3 years of being cool and Stephens were forgotten, and I was back. But that's because I loved D school. I loved the professors. Amartya Sen taught there, Kaushik Vasu taught there, Suresh Tendulkar taught there, Pranoy came there on Sundays to teach. And I think it's just, if you love economics, it's the place to be. And the reason I went there is because my father was obsessed with the fact that I should, join IS, or I personally wanted to do a PhD. But I think I just loved what I did. I reverted to mean, but I also played a lot of golf before I joined. Somebody was talking about golf, so that continued. I never gave up on that. So that was there was limited entertainment through social media, etc. Doordarshan tha ek paas hamare paas. But golf was something that I was very passionate about, and I kept up with it all through my growing up years.
Yeah. And then, like you said, that you wanted to pursue higher studies and wanted to do a PhD. But in the meantime, you joined a bank. Was it because of your dad? Because he was a banker? And what made you decide on, the bank that you joined?
No, now that you say it, Sonu, probably it was the genes, right? That's why I gravitated towards banking. But the idea was that I'd done economics and I wanted to go and do a PhD. My parents didn't have the means. So I thought, chalo, we'll work for 2-3 years, get some money. That time banking had good money. We joined a Citibank or a Grindlays. Those were really the two bank options. And I said, fine, I'll do it for 2-3 years, save some money, and then go on to do my PhD. So I was a complete accidental banker. Why I went to banking and corporate, probably you're right. I've never thought about it that way. It's probably because my dad was a banker. So I thought, let's give this a try. And the money was good, right? I knew I could save enough. And the Grindlays at that time used to give loans, etc. So get a loan and then maybe go and do a PhD.
Yeah, yeah. And, then you became an investment banker. And investment banking is right at the top of the banking pyramid. And, I should know because I was a consumer banker. And we consumer bankers are like at the bottom of the banking pyramid. I mean, no management trainee wanted to come and, join consumer banking. They all wanted to join investment banking team in the bank. This is now over the last 10-20 years. But when you joined, what was investment banking like at that time? I mean, was investment banking a thing at that time? What drew you to investment banking?
So investment banking wasn't a thing. And the first year that I joined in Grindlays, when you said retail banking, my fondest memories are of retail banking. So me and my partner in crime.
That warms the cockles of my heart.
Correct.
An investment banker saying that she loves consumer banking.
Yeah, now look, all the valuations and the multiples are for consumer banking. So I better say that, right? All my friends are consumer. Nobody wants investment bankers. Those things trade at half times book. Consumer banking which trades at 5 times book value. So no, I think, look, my fondest memories are of that. And me and my friend and colleague Sanjana Bhasin, we were sent off to Grindlays had then opened 15 new branches. We were a batch of 50 trainees who joined, and the idea was to primarily put us into retail banking, because Grindlays was giving a push to retail banking. So Sanjana was an IIM Ahmedabad graduate, I was from D school, and we were told go to all the new branches we were opening, 15 or 20, and take an inventory of all the chairs, desks, tables, lamps, books. So we had to everything used to be manually. So go and stick stickers, chair number 87 / branch number 3 / whatever. So we dressed in our nice clothes, which had been funded by our parents, not thinking we were going to change the world in this banking world. All we did for the first 1 month was inventories in 15 branches, and all the branch managers and all would get hassled with us because it's branch timings, right? That time people used to come into branches and all that. And what are we doing? We're going under the chairs and sticking these things, moving the desks. Everyone hated us at these two young people, dressed in fine clothes and trying to, throw their weight around. So it's my fondest memory. And I say to people, that's what really, it's the most humbling effect, because it shows you that no task is less or low, right? Because if you want to be a banker or be good at a job, you must know every aspect of it. And I think that was good. It taught me that this is also an important part, right, now of what goes into making a bank. So yeah, so I think maybe that's what chased me away from retail banking. I was like, I don't want to do any more of this. I have to get out of this. But what I got into was corporate banking, because as you said, investment banking was a very different species at that point. Very select people did it. Nobody knew. It was called merchant banking at that point. And it was actually in Grindlays, I stayed in corporate banking. It was when I went into Barclays, I got into investment banking. And that's really when India was opening up and a lot of equity raising, capital raising was happening through GDRs and etc., offshore listings. And that's when I got excited and wanted to be a part of it. But yeah, it was a very rare species. Nobody knew what I was doing. Nobody knew why I left a established bank like Grindlays and joined Barclays. BZW was the investment banking division. My father was so upset. He's like, what am I going to tell my friends in Delhi Golf Club? What is BZW? Nobody knows. So I was like, it's okay, we'll survive. So yeah, it was a very, very uncommon career choice.
So you just said that, as part of consumer banking, you started in the branches doing whatever you do. So in consumer banking, your starting point is the branch. That's the lowest point of starting. In investment banking, I understand that it is the job of an analyst. And today, analysts are very much in demand. And you've talked to me about how analysts are booked into these $1,000 rooms and they are pampered. But again, go back to the early days. What was the job of an analyst like? What did you also do a bit of that work? How has the job of an analyst changed over the years?
I think, it's the lowest form of life, right? Basically, you join in, you have no rights, and you have to carry the entire organization through, right? You're basically doing all the work with limited resources, with limited understanding of the business, because you're trying to understand the business. You're right out of business school, etc. You don't really know industry sectors. So you're learning on the job, but at the same time with huge time limits, right? Because there's a pitch to the client the next day. We all work in competitive businesses. So let's say the client says, come Friday, there's a pitch and we're calling 10 banks. You can't say, no, I'll take another 1 week because my analyst doesn't know the sector. So you're working 24 times 7. It's enormous pressure. And it's enormous, hard work. So basically, I think that first year or 2 years of investment banking, if you can survive the rest of the career. It just keeps getting easier. And as you said, so at that point, there were no rights for an analyst. You were supposed to be just grateful for the fact that you broke into this very coveted career. And if you're working 24 times 7, if you've not seen sunlight, if you're working Sundays, if you're literally going and sleeping under your desk, which is what I did when I moved to London for the first 1 month, it was seen as everyone's done it. It's no big deal. So I think that, but of course, again, what it teaches you, it really teaches you the business, right? You really learn. You do so much of this that now you can actually just look at a presentation and eyeball it and tell you where the errors are. So it teaches you that, but it's very hard the first year, 18 months. Unfortunately, when I was an analyst, we were basically underinvested in the analyst pool. So basically, always there was more work per analyst than there should be. That's changed a lot because I think the millennials and Gen Z, etc., don't want to work this way. So people are quitting investment banking, people are quitting private equity and saying, look, our life is important, our lifestyle is important. The pandemic especially has made people realize that. So the pendulum has swung the other way, where now analysts are the most important people in an organization. Any MD meet of ours internally talks about how to retain these analysts and what more you can do. Is it a 2-night stay in the most expensive hotel in New York? Is it a holiday somewhere in the Caribbean? So I think it's swung the other way, but I think it needed to swing that way for it to find a balance, because frankly, all of us over-invested in our MDs and senior resources and under-invested in the analysts. Yeah. So I'm really happy that the change is happening. It's happening in a way that's really hurting organizations, but look, maybe that's how most change happens.
Yeah, so you've talked about hard work, and one of the things that bedazzle people, especially youngsters, about investment banking is when they see the glitzy lifestyle of, like the MDs and CEOs of investment banking. But I think that glitz actually doesn't, or it covers up the sheer hard work and, grit and determination that is required. You've just talked about sleeping under your desk for 12 days and eating frozen rajma chawal, as you had told me. So tell us what happened. I mean, why were you sleeping under the desk? Why couldn't you even go back somewhere and sleep on a proper bed?
I mean, Neeta, there was no time, right? I mean, it was in London. My home was like 50 minutes away. And that meant that if going and coming itself was 2 hours, and then what am I going for? A quick shower? All these offices, by the way, had shower areas. So I was essentially going to go for a shower. Sleep was not part of the job description at that point. And then it's only more tiring because it was cold. It was November and December when I just moved. So what was I achieving? I did it for the first 1 or 2 days, I thought I came back even more exhausted, right? And then when I was away is the time that somebody would call. Remember, there were no mobile phones, so somebody would call at the desk and say, is the presentation ready? So I said, forget it. I just got my toothbrush from home, went down under my table to sleep. My mother had made frozen rajma chawal, like all good Punjabi mothers, which I hated. It's a joke even to date. The colleagues I'm in touch with say, you couldn't enter that area of 10 feet by 10 feet because, the Manisha smell was there. There is huge rajma chawal smell, which I would microwave. And I think that's how I survived. I think, as you said, a lot of these careers, investment banking, tech nowadays, the tech industry, you see a lot of the glamour, you see the valuations, you see the stock options people get, and the wealth that has been created in the tech industry today, like the investment banking industry 20 years ago. But I think what you don't see is the extreme amount of hard work, personal sacrifice, and resilience that goes into building this career. Always, as I said to you, Sonu, you have to be game on in front of a client. The client is doing transformational things for his company. He doesn't want to hear about the fact that your child is unwell or your in-laws are not feeling too good or your mother needs you. He's not interested, and rightly so. He's running an organization. He has ambitions for the organization, and we are in a service industry. So if I have to always be game on, and I'm in a competitive industry, right? So I think it's a lot of hard work, a lot of self-sacrifice, a lot of discipline. And that goes into building this career. And under the desk is just one incident. There were lots of incidents later in life when my daughter was born and she was unwell and she had 102, 103 fever and I had to take a red eye to New York. It really breaks your heart as a mom, because as a mom anyway we are programmed to guilt, right? So
yeah,
all of those challenges I think really go into making this career. What you see is, and I think a lot of us to blame, because we portray only the good of this career, right? But there's also a lot at the back which goes on, and I think a lot of us have internalized that over the years. But I think it's time to talk about that this career is not for the weak-hearted, right?
yeah. So we're talking about investment banking, but for some of the people who may not know what exactly is investment banking, how would you describe it to them? I mean, what is it that you do? So I'm not going to put words in your mouth. So what is it that you do in investment?
करते क्या हो पिता कितनी
अपने फादर को बताओगे तो क्या बोलेंगे? What will your father tell his friends? कि मेरी
you don't open any branches, you don't lend any money, you don't do any good for them. What is this career? So I think what investment banking is that you're doing the role of an intermediary, where you're bringing a buyer, simplistically put, getting a buyer and a seller together. And whether it's through a merger and acquisition, where you're putting two like-minded companies together or two complementary companies together, that's what mergers and acquisition is. And then there's fundraising, which is basically assisting companies either through the IPO route or through the private route, which is private equity or other high net worth customers, family offices, which you work with, basically bringing capital from them into companies which are looking to raise funds. So that's simplistically put is what investment banking. It's the role of an intermediary.
Yeah, and I would assume that most of the sellers and the buyers would be men. I don't see too many women, and so we're not talking about, we're not ranting, just a plain question. So it is actually a man's world, and you're a woman in a man's world. So tell me, how do the men react to you?
So you and I were doing a session the other day, and you said something which made me realize that I didn't quite feel that terrible about being the only woman in the room, and I didn't wasn't too aware of that, but I think the men clearly were, and I think I realized that as I went along, because people wouldn't make eye contact with me. Even when I became the CEO and I was the head of the team, people would look at people to my left and right, my colleagues, and answer. Even if I'm answering the question, they would make eye contact with the gentleman on the left and right and not look at me. They wouldn't, especially in Delhi, they wouldn't shake my hand. They would say namaste. There was a lot of that. In fact, why even inside the conference room, outside when I would go for a meeting, especially in Delhi government offices, where Delhi actually has a lot of women in bureaucracy, right? Even then, the secretary outside would ask me, who else has come with me? So I would say, it's me. And they would say, but who will talk? And I would be like, it's me. And they would be like, that's sacrilege. What are you going to talk about, right? So I think it started right there that, what is a woman going to do in a conversation on banking, and, hearing me talk about cash flows, DCFs, balance sheets, was just a strange concept to everyone. So I think it was as much a paradigm. I think it was more a paradigm shift for the people in the room than it was for me, because I think I came from a family where I was the favorite child. So I sort of felt I was my brother always to date says like he's like the lesser favorite or the least favorite of the family. So I think coming from that confidence level, I didn't feel so much of a issue, but I think around me people felt felt very odd about me being, and me participating in the conversation was even more odd. And it took a lot of years, and even now I think there is a lot of that challenge, unfortunately, little less, but I don't say that it's totally gone away. It's still tough for the women.
Yeah. So investment banking, your career, your deals take you across countries, across cultures. So keeping to this reaction of men, do you think, I mean, how does it change from country to country, culture to culture? And also, if you can tell us some interesting things about different cultures that you have seen, what are the differences? And is there any thread of continuity that runs through all the cultures that you have experienced as an investment banker?
Sure, I think so. If you see through the span of my career, I think probably the women in investment banking are few and far between across countries, unfortunately. And not just investment banking, even in corporates, right? I think even in the Western world, because support is less, help is less, unfortunately, the corporate world tends to be dominated by men. Changing, is it changing fast enough? No, you see few women here and there, you do, but not enough. So typically, whichever geography I've been to, I've been in male-dominated boardrooms, etc. Very few women, and even in organizations, women have been mostly in the back office, right? Even in the organizations I worked with, they've sort of been the COOs, etc. Very powerful internally in the organization, but never really client-facing because they found it a challenge when the babies, etc. come. So I think that's the common theme. I think when I started off initially and I went to London, also people were like, what is a brown woman doing in this organization? Is she just here to build CV value and get a good husband? And is that what this is about? That, you work 6 months in London, so I'm more eligible for the boys. So initially it was like very strange. At Friday evening, when Friday afternoon, as you know, everyone in London goes off for a beer at 3:30. I wasn't asked, I wasn't invited because they weren't sure that she drink beer. Can they crack the boy jokes with me around? And they couldn't, right? So, I mean, even if I went for a beer, I would go for one and then come back because I knew I wasn't really welcome. So I think that bit is a challenge that has remained. It's now changing because I think now the younger girls are far more participative. They're breaking the boys' club. I think what was different was that I think, there was a bigger awareness of fact that there's a woman is working, and lesser of those judgmental comments on, I remember initially me and my husband did the same job and I was asked 4 years into marriage by clients who I got to know well on when am I going to have a child, what is happening, and I don't think Sanjay was ever asked those kind of weird questions, right? So I think the fact that in India, it was a natural progression that I was just doing it for 3-4 years. So either I got married or the babies came. Those were not the questions that were asked globally. Globally, there's a very heightened sensitivity and always was there, right? I mean, there was a respect that if you're in that room, you're serious about what you're doing. And those kind of judgmental questions weren't asked. Maybe they were asked here out of concern. I don't know. But I mean, it was all very odd. Genuinely, maybe there was concern and they got fond of me over the years and they asked me that when are the babies coming? Why are the babies not coming? And what, all sorts of domestic questions which Sanjay was never asked. And I like to believe that maybe there was a bit of concern there, but it was very awkward, right? Because you're going in as a professional. Yeah. But I don't think globally those kind of questions are ever asked. But the female bias remains. There is it is an old boys club no matter where you go in the world.
Yeah. No, so let's keep the women and the gender issue aside. But all through the cultures, in terms of anything else that has stuck with you for, in terms of the similarities that you saw in different countries or different cultures. It could be around work, it could be around emotions, it could be around family, it could be around anything. But the question is, are we similar in some manner? We know that we are different across countries, but are we similar in some manner?
So so one thing I saw especially when I did cross-border M&A, a lot of Indian companies went and acquired companies globally at the moment because India as a market is growing so much. Corporates are concentrating on the Indian market, but initially for market, for technology, for skills, a lot of acquisitions happened. And I think the one thing that I saw which was starkly different was that because Indian companies, a lot of them were entrepreneur driven and formed first generation entrepreneur who had set up these companies, there was too much passion and emotion in those discussions, right? Because you had sort of created this company and you took everything personally. And while that's great because you created the company and you own the best, I think somewhere you just missed the rationale and stopped seeing the other side's point of view. While the other side in most cases was, professionals like you and me who were running the business. So I think, there was less passion and emotion, and oddly enough, more rational decisions, more long-term decisions. I think in a lot of the entrepreneur decisions, the near term and, oh my God, I have to be the chairman, or the brand of this company has to survive. My father created this brand, this has to survive no matter what happens in the merger. Things like that broke the deals. And a lot of those companies today are in bankruptcy, and I feel so bad. I'm like 10 years ago, if they had done what they had, if when the Four Seasons had come or the Emirates had come and they'd sold and not, not got carried away by this emotion, it would have been, businesses must survive. Entrepreneurs can go away, but it's so difficult to build a business in India. The kind of regulatory approvals, etc., you need land approvals. It's so hard. I mean, I have huge respect for these entrepreneurs and what they've created, right? But then you must think of the organization beyond yourself, and I think that ceases to happen in most cases. So that, I think, was the one negative I thought. The one positive I thought was the entrepreneur never got tired. So in a negotiation, the other side would get tired because Friday evening they wanted to go home to their families and their kids and all that. They're professional. But the entrepreneur was happy to meet Sunday morning, 11 o'clock and have a discussion, right? He was like, this is all I do. This is all I have. So I think that's where they won. They won in just, tiring the other side out on negotiations, especially if they were buying something or selling something. The other guy would finally give in on those clauses on the shareholders agreement or the share purchase agreement, saying can't negotiate so much. So I think it works both ways. But I think that's the one thing that I felt was different, that, of course, at the end, we are all humans. We are all charged by emotion, etc. But I think because you're professional, you can detach yourself a little bit from the organization, which the Indian entrepreneur just wasn't able to.
They can't do. So also, when you work on deals, you have to travel. You talked about road shows and you talked about traveling across countries. Now, I believe that when you travel with people, you actually get to know their real selves. So since you've been traveling across the world for so many years with so many different people, what are some of the learnings that you have? You see the real people behind the people, and have you learned to like you read a balance sheet? You say you can just eyeball it and figure out. Have you learned to eyeball people as well?
Totally, Sonu. You really get to know the real person when you're outside the country. I think Indians just feel more comfortable when they're outside. That, the minute, I know in the old days of Jet Airways, the minute you get off that flight, you're a different person, right? So long as you're on Jet Airways flight, you still felt you're in India. You yell out to the air hostess, ask for masala chai, this, that. And the minute you enter immigration, you're a whole new person. So I think more disciplined. So I think that was good. It was more manageable. They would reach meetings on time because, there everyone meets you on time. That bit was the positive, that, there was no question here. I could go and wait 45 minutes outside the client's office and it was seen as no big deal. There, everyone's on time. So that bit, the discipline that the same Indian shows with the minute he touches the shore outside of India is stellar. I think the other thing, as you said, you also see the real side because, especially in the early days when we used to go on road shows, etc., you're doing 5 investor meetings a day. And it's tiring and exhausting. And I remember, some clients would throw a tantrum and say, I'm not doing the next meeting till I get my Indian food, till I get the dal chawal. I can't eat this cardboard sandwich anymore. And I remember we were on an Infosys roadshow, and without naming one of the executives, who's still a dear friend, he threw a fit and he said, I'm not going ahead till I get prawn curry. I can't sing for my supper anymore. So we had to arrange that. So I think you get to see a lot of these mannerisms, and it's the same point, Sonu, that people are human, and you can't run people like machines. I know we're investment bankers and we're very goal-oriented, and it's all about getting on to the next deal and next mandate and finishing this. But you have to realize that there are humans there, and humans come with their own idiosyncrasies, and especially when you're internationally, you're on a different turf. Indians like to roam around in big teams. So, you have to basically, for a deal where the other side has 2 people, we'll have 10 because we just like to hunt in numbers. So you have to carry 10 people's emotions and, needs along with you. And secondly, as you said, somebody wants Indian food, somebody wants to, somebody's a Jain and we have to go hunting for food for him. Somebody doesn't want to pay for the laundry and you're like, please, we need to go in with an ironed suit. We can't go in with unironed trousers, right? We're going to meet the largest fund in the world. We can't go with crumpled clothes, right? And they're like, we are paying 25 quid for this stuff. And you're like, well, we have to do it. We are playing this game to win, right? So a lot of that challenges happened, and you learn to live with it, and learn to now it all sounds funny, and in hindsight. But at that time, I can tell you, especially when you're an analyst and associate, you're overwhelmed because it's your job to get the client on time, and the MD will beat you up if you're not there on time and not the presentations aren't there correctly put out, etc. So that time was very stressful. Now it all seems funny, but it's very different. Things are very different when they go outside the country.
Yeah, and I remember you talking about a time when somebody threw a tantrum and you actually had to go into the hotel kitchen and cook the towel for that person. So instances like this. And also there is this interesting story that you shared about Ladro ka dog, Ladro ka kuta, and how you narrowly escaped being prosecuted for shoplifting at Harrods. So, I found this really classy, ek to Harrods upar se Ladro, so just tell us about about that kissa.
That's not a kissa I like to remember at all. It gives me goosebumps even now. We went on this roadshow in my early years, and there were like some 30-40 people entourage which was going, and we had we had the weekend off, and then next week Monday we were going into the different European cities. So somebody decided that we want to go to Harrods just to have a look, and I don't think anyone had the means to shop or so. And as we were walking out, everyone agreed that we will meet at, let's say, 2 p.m. at a certain place. We met there, and one of the people on that team, one of the senior people on the team, handed me something just quickly, and it all happened too quickly. I didn't know what it was. It's just something in my hand, and this is at the door, right? Where the doors are, the two sets of Harrod doors are there. Between that, he handed me this thing in my hand, and I thought, who knows? Just usual analysts dump everything on them. I'm the Gada Mazdoor there. So I took it and I walked out, and suddenly that whole place started beeping onto me. And I was like, I still didn't know what happened. I thought, regular checks must be happening. I continued to walk, and the security guard came to me and said, ma'am, you need to come with me. I don't know what happened. And I'm worried that these people are walking away and then I won't find them. I have to put them in cars, all that usual stuff, right? So I said, no, I have to go. And he said, you absolutely can't go. You have to come with me. So lo and behold, I went in. They marched me into the security room with lots of cameras, etc., 3 floors away, dark, dingy room. And they said, why were you taking this? And I had no recall. I had already put this in my coat pocket thinking, who knows what this is? And at that point, I took it out and I focused, and it was, this brand called Ladro. They make these porcelain little statues, and it was a porcelain statue of a little dog. And it was a damn porcelain dog that was in my hand with, of course, the code, the shop code and everything on it. So I don't know. I'd like to give the benefit. He picked it up by mistake or whatever happened. But, the point is that I was accused of shoplifting. And I thought, oh my God, all the years, my whole life flashed in front of me, that all the years my father has invested in me, my mother has invested, now I'm going to be in London jail. The guy was like really stuck. But thankfully, with my luck, the head was the head of security was Pakistani. And he gave me a big lecture, and he said, you shouldn't, your parents must have invested so much in you. आपको उनका नाम बर्बाद नहीं करना चाहिए. कुत्ते के लिए आप अपने इतनी बेइज्जती कर रहे हैं, and आपने ले लिया, आपके बहुत कमाई होगी, आप फिर खरीदना, अभी क्यों चोरी करके लेके जा रहे हैं? Gave me a 10-minute lecture. I heard it, and I said, you're so right. I was wrong. I कभी चोरी नहीं करूँगी फिर से. I put that damn dog there, and I left. So it was like the call of duty of another level only. So to date, if I go with my daughter in Atrium Mall in Bombay, there used to be a Ladro. If I see that store, I don't want to go anywhere 3 miles near that store. I'm like, please, nobody, I don't want to see a Ladro for the rest of my life. So I think all sorts of crazy things happened, and I survived it, and I'm here to tell the story.
But did that guy say anything to you after?
Nothing.
Nothing.
It was not even, I felt awkward talking about it. He was much older than me. He was then 50 and I was 24, and we just never discussed it. It was as if it never happened. And they all knew that something was happening because they were all waiting, because I would organize the cars, etc. And so they were all waiting outside. So everyone knew something had happened. So them asked me what happened, and I said, no, nothing. But he never said a thing. And I met him many times after that in India also. Even in India, he never raised it. He never said, I'm sorry, I picked it up by mistake. I panicked. Anything could have been said, right? But never.
Yeah, so now, when you talk about people refusing to look you in the eye, if this guy refuses to look you in the eye, you know why.
Correct, exactly. But he did. That's what's amazing. He continued like nothing had happened.
Yeah. And so, earlier you talked about you had to ferry large number of people as part of your team from one end of the town to the other. And you said that, you've told me that you used to hire these stretch limos. So, there would be Indians and, your team going in stretch limos. Describe that experience, because if there are 5 stretch limos on the road, I'm sure everybody turns around and looks at, who's going. And then these
Yeah.
stretch limos go and stop in front of a dollar store.
Yeah, so this was also in the early part of the career, because this was at the time that India started doing those disinvestments and privatizations. And if you disinvested a company, let's say GAIL, there were people from GAIL, there were people from the Ministry of Petroleum, Ministry of Disinvestment, Finance. So it became a large entourage. And actually, the reason these limos were hired was not because people wanted to roam around these limos, but because they became the most cost effective. And you could also discuss what is to be said in the meeting, because you're all together, right? Because out there, it's not me who's going to speak, it's or my MD who's going to speak, it's the team of the clients that's going to do this. So it was very cost effective and efficient. And, because we were all global banks, we would get the best rates for these limos. So, but it was, everyone would look, you could see on the street, even then, 4 limos going by, even if you're in London or New York, people would look and say, look, who's going? People probably thought it was a celebrity as opposed to some boring bankers and Sarkari types running around the place. So it was, and then I remember one of these roadshows, one of the people said that my daughter has told me, she lives in US, that you get the best deals in all you can buy for $1, those stores. So there we go. Firstly, telling the limo driver itself that I want to go to this place uptown was unbelievable. The guy thought, I think he wanted to drop us all. He was like this guy with an attitude. He drives limo, and here are these needy people saying, can you take me to the dollar store? So I think telling those guys itself was I think a racist moment in my life. I was like, who are these brownies? Where do they want to go? So anyway, we enter these stores. These guys shop there. I mean, of course, we all are limited means, so everyone loves those stores. And I'll never forget the one time that one person was checking out, and he started to negotiate with the till woman on how he should get a better deal, because he bought like 60 things. And it was just the most embarrassing moment. And then I remember when we went out, those dollar stores give those horrible, ugly poly bags. The limo guy was like, just throw them in the boot. He wouldn't look at us. He wouldn't touch those bags. Normally, he would come to rush and get our bags. He just opened the boot and looked at us and said, please put it there. So after that, I decided that no more limos when we go on road shows. We will just go in regular cars, because we can't have that experience again.
Yeah. So, these experiences that you've had when you've traveled, do you find there's a difference between the public sector guys and the private sector guys? And sorry, this is not meant to be classist, elitist or whatever, but is there a difference in the public sector and the private sector? And do you really think that privatization is that silver bullet that can cure all ills?
So I think, look, I'm all for privatization, because I think, there is just this. There is actually a lot of good talent in the state-owned companies. The best presentations that I have heard in front of investors, people who know their business, is these public sector professionals. The way they know their sectors, oil and gas, telecom, etc., is phenomenal. And by the way, a lot of the successful companies in the private sector have been, whether it's in telecom, whether it's not, have been formed by these people who then moved on because, they're just not compensated enough. I haven't got the right promotion. So I think there's a lot of talent. I respect them. My own father is state-owned banks, so I know the kind of talent that comes. In SBI, I see now the talent in State Bank of India. The kind of talent that there is mind-boggling. But they're too shackled by the shareholder. The decision-making is too slow, and basically you can't compete with the entrepreneur who's then racing ahead, right? And the kind of capital they're getting access to, because in the mind of the investor, he doesn't want to invest with a company where there is no concept of a return on equity or an IRR, and the shareholder is too disconnected. The shareholder's priorities are different, and he's using the state-owned company for social causes. So I think they lose out because of their parentage. Their parentage is not a positive. It may have been a positive 15, 20 years ago or 25 years ago. It's today baggage. So I think, and the ones that have got themselves out of the shackles, a company like BPCL, which works out of Bombay, just for the fact that it's in a different location, the ones that have got out of those shackles have done very well. So I really strongly believe, and by privatization, I don't mean go and give it to the next Indian private sector company or go and give it to Shell and BP. I mean, even if you let it run like an HDFC or a Kotak, well, Kotak is led by Kotak, but let's say an HDFC, that's just professionals, just, sell the shares in the market. Today, the markets are strong enough that these people run these companies and lead their destiny. I think there will be a much better outcome, because they can make a lot of change. Their scale is something else. It's just that they're languishing because their parent has a lot of other priorities. Yeah. So that's what I see. I think in terms of professionalism, whether it's the state-owned manager or the private sector manager, once he's out there, he works as efficiently, he does his job as well. I never felt that, the state-owned manager is being lethargic, etc., or, not thinking about his shareholder. But, for all the reasons that I said before, I really believe strongly that these companies, the government has no business being in the business of business.
Yeah. So you've actually seen the country and the economy change, because when you started working, liberalization had just, come in. And now, from then to now, and we just celebrated 30 years of liberalization. Have you seen a change in the way that clients deal with you, in the way that you need to manage teams? How has the transition been over the last 30 years around people?
I think this is not unique to me. I think clients deal better with people as you build more credibility with them. Initially, when you come, there's skepticism, and this is not female or male driven. It's just generally.
Yeah, so this is not about you personally, but you've witnessed change. So if you can describe what you've witnessed, not really around gender.
Okay, so I think when I started, there was a lot of credibility given to age and numbers of years of work X, right? But I think that's changed. And the reason that's changed is because a lot of the clients themselves are young, right? Whether it's in the tech sector or the consumer sector, a lot of the entrepreneurs themselves are 25 to 30 years old. Ritesh Agarwal is like a college dropout. So I think the kind of credence that was given to age and that being an overriding criteria is no longer there. If you're young and you have a good idea, people are willing to listen to you. I think that's one thing that's changed. I think the gender bias is slowly changing. I know we don't want to talk about it, but I think it's not as acute as it was, when we started off. I think people are more accepting of women. Are women staying in more? No, but I think people are getting slightly more accepting of seeing women in finance investment. Organizations are getting, more diversity conscious. So I think whether it's the client or the organization, I think both are doing a lot more to respect younger talent, to listen to younger talent, to hear their point of view, and to engage them and to retain them. So I think that's the one positive that I see for the young people today. I say to them that, and I sound like an old auntie, but I say, look, if I could have survived that period, you guys are, it should be much easier for you. Which sounds terrible because, when our parents said that to us, we would hate it. But it's true. I think both organizations and clients treat youngsters with a lot more EQ now than they did then.
Yeah. And you do know that I work in the area of family businesses, and therefore, what I do want to ask you is, you must have started, when you started 30 years ago, you must have dealt with the patriarchs of the business owners, and now you would be dealing with the next gen, the inheritors. Do you see a difference between the patriarchs and the inheritors?
Of course, absolutely.
Who are easier to deal with? And why?
I think different organizations, different. I think the patriarch, the most important thing, of course, the passion with which he can work and the work ethic he brings is unbelievable, right? But I think, as I said before, that passion sometimes goes to the detriment of the company. And I think the next generation is able to detach themselves a bit. And in fact, a lot of the next generation, Sonu, as you will know, have hired professional management. So they work as a shareholder. They recognize they may not have all the necessary skills that, let's say, the professionals have. Look at a Marico or a Dabur, or there are many other such companies where they've brought in professional managers. They keep the key control points as a shareholder, as a good shareholder should do. But they've decided that maybe this business is better run by someone who has better skills for this. And actually, the shareholders, including themselves, have actually benefited enormously from that. So to that extent, I think some of the second generation have done well. Some second generation have really destroyed wealth, and that's probably been because, it's very difficult to grow under a banyan tree, and the banyan tree, in some cases, the patriarch has been just too much of a control freak and not let these people blossom, or just not empowered them enough, or just not trained them well enough, brought them straight in as a CEO. I think that's a real problem, right? If you bring in your next generation, you must get them to start in the factories and the base level and understand the business. You bring them on the top, teams don't recognize, teams leave, they themselves don't know enough of the business, right? So I think those are red flags. You know that those companies will get into trouble, right?
Yeah.
So both some patriarchs, I've seen the second generation has been better. Some second generation has been a disaster, and those companies have just disappeared. From the names that were revered in our times, and now they're in bankruptcy. It shocks me. I remember when we started off, those were names we really wanted to bank, and we were like, oh my God, we're going to meet these companies. And today, private equity is just stripping those companies and selling them. It breaks your. But then you see that it's actually the founder who did it, right? Because he didn't detach soon enough.
Yeah. So, when you look back at your last 30 odd years or 40 years, 30 years of WorkX, which deal brings the widest smile to your face?
So which deal? I love every deal. I'm passionate about every deal. I think I have the whole patriarch syndrome of being too emotional. My team sometimes tell me to just step back. So I can't choose between them. They're all my babies. But I think the one weekend that I think was a really high point on my career was when we advised Vodafone on the acquisition of Hutch telecom business. That was an $18 billion deal. And the same weekend, we advised Birla Hindalco on the acquisition of a Canadian company called Moelis. So that was like $25 billion done on a Sunday evening. And I don't think it gets better than that. It got better than that for me. And they were both very different deals, right? And they were both extremely tough negotiations because Vodafone had Hutch on one side, Lika Singh, one of the toughest negotiators, and SR, which was the minority partner. So it took a lot of negotiation, a lot of hard work. Birla's, again, Novelis was a company, American company, skeptical about how their parentage with the Marwari traditional company is going to be. They live in America, they're these heavy drinkers. There is this Marwari company which eats vegetarian food. They don't know what alcohol is, So a lot of cultural mismatch. So the fact that we could get both these deals across the line on a Sunday was a high point. And by the way, when I came back after both the press conferences, my mother, who was staying with us because my daughter was very young, said to me, now you need to make puppets for your daughter because she has a puppet show in school where she's talking. It's a show and share for her. So I was like, I don't do this. I do large deals. She was like, too bad, come here. So I think it's very good. All of us women having moms who keep you real is a very important thing in life. So that's another reason that I'll never forget that Sunday that I had to come home and make puppets after all of that talk about those large numbers, etc., etc. But that was one of my favorite moments.
Yeah. So Manisha, I think we are almost at the end of the time. So this has been really fascinating, where we have got an insight into what actually goes behind investment banking. So before we finish off, all these millennials are very different in their attitude towards work, as we briefly discussed. Do you see investment banking as a career option for people? I mean, should it be a career option for people? And if yes, what is it that they need to focus on before they actually join the investment banking space?
So I think, look, I love the career. I think it's a great career because, at a very young age, you get to meet people right at the top of their game. And it sort of inspires you because, you're dealing with entrepreneurs who are just the best because you typically tend to work with the bigger, larger companies, assisting them. Sometimes you also work with companies which, for them, who are turning point, that capital raise or that merger which transformed them. So the kind of work that you do in investment banking is so thrilling, right? It's like a roller coaster, and it's like a gladiator sport. You're sort of going out there, winning business on your own, etc. It's not like, you have a huge team like in retail banking. You're pretty much out there selling your own wares. So I think it's exciting and thrilling, but like every rainbow, it comes with its rain and it comes with its challenges and its hard work. And I think it's not for the weak-hearted, as I said. And I think what's nice now is that all of the things that the organization is doing to make it better for you. Having said that, it's still going to be challenging, but I think if I were to start my career again, I would start it in investment banking again, because I know that today everyone is so aware of the rights of an analyst and the fact that they need to be treated properly and they need to be not overworked. People are overhiring on analysts and associates so that you can have a better quality of life. So I would do it again. I think it's one of the best careers.
Yeah, and I wish that more youngsters who are listening to you actually realize that no career can be successful unless they are willing to put in that hard work. So thank you, Manisha. Fascinating to listen to you and interesting to hear all those stories, and hope to continue this another time. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, Sonu. Thanks for having me.